Hello, and hang on, I am recording. Yes, I have clicked record. I was confused then for a minute.
Leave it in.
Hello, and welcome to Cage Fighting. It's your main man, Andy Gillard here. Hope everyone's keeping well right now.
Sup fools, Matt Guy here. Hope everybody's having a splendid, warm spring evening, morning, noon, whenever it is.
Happy Easter Monday, I suppose. And just wait for the countdown for Albion to lose again, which is always enjoyable. Easter-based question, though. How do you eat yours, or don't you? Because
Are we talking cream eggs or just eggs in general?
well, you can take it how you want. I mean, cream eggs, and eggs in general, I presume you just smash them to pieces and then eat the fragments like normal people do. But cream eggs, I've always just bit it in half and then ate them as two halves, rather than any of that sucking stuff.
Interesting.
I take the top off a cream egg, get my tongue in there to scoop out the innards, and then polish off the chocolatey outside.
I'm not really a cream egg guy, but if I was having maybe like a lint egg, whatever it is, or something like that, I think I'd do a Gillard. Yeah, I'd fillet this egg within an inch of its life, and then scoff the hollow chocolate in the middle.
All about the tongue action.
That's it. I had an Easter egg today, and I did like an old fan cast trick of dunking it into my coffee and scooping the coffee out, and it was lovely. Haven't done that for a few years, and like forgot that was a thing that we used to talk about weirdly regularly for something that niche. But yeah, it was a lovely treat, to be fair.
I was somewhere so posh this weekend that kids walked into a shop and it was the end of like an Easter egg hunt in the village. And I was like, God almighty, this is the poshest thing I've ever heard or seen in my entire life. It was incredible. They were like, they'd been around the village following signs, and then all signs ended up at this shop. And they didn't even have to buy anything. They just were given like a treat at the end by the little old lady that ran the shop.
Were they called like Barnaby and Theodore and stuff like that?
There was a Barnaby, legitimately was a like, come on now, Barnaby. But this was from just a family that were in the street. But yeah, it was something. And there's me like walking through, trying to find a geocache at the top of my voice, going, "It's over here, it's over here." Dear, oh dear.
Sounds fantastic. Gents, it's our QuestionCast 60. So, as per the rules, we do a top 5. Top 5 films based on true events. The reason I sort of floated this as the idea was off of the back of watching Air a couple of weeks back. But obviously, I think it's only just been released. I got to see it at one of the early preview screenings. And I'd said at the time that I think it was the first 5-star film that I've seen this year. I have seen John Wick as well since, and I agree with Stu. That's also a 5-star film. But I still think that Air is probably my favourite film of the year so far. Like, I'm a massive fan of Ben Affleck anyway, so I am a little bit biased in those terms. I think as a visual director, he's so capable of setting up a scene to look like where it is, whether it's in Air or when he did Argo. Like, you felt like you were in I believe it was 70s or 80s set Afghanistan. Like, you felt like you could quite easily be there. Ben Affleck is such a wonderful director. So yeah, that was the reason really behind this one as a think piece for us this week. Obviously, top 5s, we go round the table as normal. I'll go first, Matt, and then Stu. 5 to 2, give some honourable mentions, and then give our number 1 what we think is the best. So I'll start off. I've tried to hit like different templates of types of true story movies. So the one I'm starting with is almost certainly based on a story that didn't actually happen. It's the Amityville Horror story, which most people who know Amityville will know that it was a murder that happened in a house. Ronald DeFeo Jr. murdered his family and claimed that evil spirits told him to do it. The murders were weird and kind of inexplicable. So it sort of supported this satanic panic thing that was going on in the States at that time. Some years later, the Lutzes moved in and they claimed to hear those same voices that were driving him to murder. In reality, the Lutzes were just shysters who were there to try and make a quick buck and sell a story off the back of it. It's a good, fun horror film. The original starring Margot Kidder and James Brolin. Like, even the remake's decent, to be fair, with Melissa George from Home and Away. Chloe Grace Moretz is also in it. And Ryan Reynolds, who is playing someone other than Ryan Reynolds for a change. Like, it's actually a semi-decent remake of a film, which we don't get many of those. This film has obviously had such a life outside of that original story. 16 other films have been made from Amityville. They've all got weird titles that somehow relate to Amityville, and they've got very tenuous links, and they range from the absolute worst to also quite shit, but they are kind of worth watching, in fairness. So that's my number 5. Have either of you two seen any of the Amityville films?
I think I've seen that Ryan Reynolds one, but if I remember correctly, wasn't The Conjuring to do with that world? Or The Conjuring is something to do with the Amityville story in some capacity. So yeah, I've seen bits and bobs from it, but as it's been told many a time on this podcast, horror in the sense of the scary horror, not the supernatural horror, isn't really my bag, generally speaking. Anyway.
Stu, I imagine it's a bit more up your street.
Yeah. I was going to say it's probably the best role I've ever seen Ryan Reynolds in. I thought he was genuinely really excellent in this film. And I haven't seen the original, but I've seen the version with him in, and I thought he was bang superb.
Yeah, like it was nice to see him not doing the one-liner gaggy stuff for a change. Like, I think even at the point that was released, he was starting to be the guy from Two Guys, a Girl and a Pizza Place. So it was nice to see something a little bit different from him. Matt, you're up next, mate.
Well, I didn't want to pick anything completely 100% biopic at all, so I haven't. And I didn't realise until I'd put these all into like a list that I've got a real theme running throughout all of these films, which I didn't ever think was a thing. However, mine would be Rain Man for my number 5. It's such it's one of these. I think it's not a sleeper film. Obviously, it's not niche and small enough to be cult. But I just don't think many people have seen Rain Man. I just doesn't get the accolade, not accolades from a critic point of view, but from just the general filthy public point of view. But I think it's just a wonderful story and a wonderful an example of like kindness and compassion in the face of greed and money, and just a world that isn't ready and that just doesn't understand. It's like a period piece now, because we know so much more about autism and things, and neurological conditions, that it's almost ahead of its time in a way, that we need to treat these things differently than the way we used to treat them in the past. And that's obviously how the film concludes. And I just think it's a really wonderful, sweet film that has more than meets the eye, and probably was a little ahead of its time.
Yeah, I think the thing is with Rain Man is that both of the main stars have gone on to do bigger films that get talked about. So Rain Man kind of gets forgotten a little bit, but it is an excellent film. And there is still like a shorthand in pop culture for anyone who is autistic or good with numbers. Like that, a lot of sitcoms especially do lean into that trope of throwing toothpicks on the ground and asking people to count it. Like, there was a really funny joke in Bob's Burgers about that, and Tina couldn't count the toothpicks, and they were saying, so you're not the good kind of autistic, was the joke sort of thing with it. So there is still that shorthand to it. Like, it does have a legacy to it, but it's probably not the film that most people think of when you say Hoffman or Cruise. But yeah,
Oh yeah,
great film.
yeah. It's definitely not, but I just think it's one of those where I think it's timeless, even though it's really dated now. Like when you look at like a young Tom Cruise, especially, it's kind of like looking at him through Top Gun lenses now, and then like looking at him then compared to now, he's like a completely different actor doing completely different things. But at the time, obviously, and I hesitate to say this, even with Cocktail and stuff like that, it was more character driven films he was doing, whereas now he's obviously an action megastar now. And I think that side of him I probably preferred than the kind of action megastar Mission Impossible franchise that he is now.
Yeah, I think I agree. Stu?
Well, on Rain Man, my choice. I was going to say on Rain Man. Did we mention Rain Man when we were talking about Tom Cruise anyway? I'm sure it came up at some point.
I think we have mentioned that film before because I mean I know it's a favourite of all three of us at some level.
I think we've probably mentioned it more than everyone else has in the last like 3 years. Yeah, my number 5 is very recent. Recent, in fact, that it was still in the cinema until 2 weeks ago, and it is obviously Cocaine Bear. Because why wouldn't it be? And of all the true tales, this kind of stretches it to the limit. Obviously, the bit with the drugs dropping on the forest is happened. A bear did eat cocaine. Did happen. Did it go on a killing rampage and people's body parts fall off? Not really. But again, who knows? But that's not the point, is it? On a bit like Andy in a weird way, I've kind of spread them out about what I wanted to choose with this, because there was some that came up when you said, "Oh, based on events or true events," that popped into my head straight away that are on this list. And there's others that didn't, and this was a trickier than I thought it would be. And then thinking of what's already been mentioned, I thought, oh shit, I should have mentioned them really. But Cocaine Bear is one of the stupidest things I've ever seen in my entire life. But up until this weekend when I watched Mario, I haven't smiled as well. I mean, there was full on belly laughs at Cocaine Bear. It's fucking outrageous. It's one of them films. It's like it's 20 years old. That it's something you'd see around about the turn of the 2000s, kind of in the Freddy Got Fingered era of outrageous madness. It kind of belongs there more than it does now. So as a throwback crazy piece, I adored it so much. And it knows what it is. I think that's the best part about it. It knows what it is, and it knows how stupid it is. And so to be loosely based on true events, it qualifies, but it deserves to be on a list of some kind anyway.
Yeah, it's a great romp of a film, isn't it? And as you say, like the fact that the actual real Cocaine Bear probably died within 3 minutes, like it doesn't make sense in the real world, but the fact that they just properly lean into the B-movie silliness of it all really makes it a great watch. Like, it was never going to be high art, but it was never sold as high art, was it?
Yeah.
I think the fact that it's set in the 85, I think it was set, and it wouldn't have been out of place had it have been released as a straight-to-video film in 1985.
Yeah.
It was sort of perfect for what it was. I loved it. I've just seen on IMDb that apparently we're getting Cocaine Shark later this year.
Why wouldn't you?
Of course. Brilliant. Matt, have you seen Cocaine Bear yet?
No. In the very few hours of the day I feel like I have, it's not high on my watch list. When Stu put in the group chat earlier, a couple of movies have made their way into the service that shall not be named. There's a couple of films I've been really wanting to see recently, just haven't found the time, and I know it's been panned to death, but that's 65.
Yeah.
I really want to watch it, and I kind of wish I hadn't have seen the poor reviews and just watch it and let it be shit on its own without seeing it. But I'm going to be watching that soon.
That's fair enough. My next one, it's a film I've already mentioned. It was a toss-up really between the one I've chose and Air. The reason I'm going for Argo, I think there's that recency bias that I've only just seen Air, and it's literally I've seen it once, whereas Argo I've seen half a dozen times. It was the film that was robbed. Or, the Ben Affleck was robbed of Best Director for. I think it won Best Picture that year, so he still got an Oscar for it. But he should have also got one for his directing. Actually, it was a wonderful film where they somehow made waiting for an airplane the most tense things you've ever seen. Like, most of it is set in an airport. It shouldn't really be that worrisome, but the way they managed to infuse the actual fear that these people are not going to get on that plane and get away from this absolute hell site that is happening half a world away from where they actually are. And I think this is another film which is a bit like a lot of other, quote unquote true stories, in that it probably didn't happen the way it is. It was probably a lot easier to get on that plane for them. But the way that Ben Affleck crafted that story and added the tension to it, I thought was masterful. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of Ben Affleck as a director. I think this film is really what set me on that path with him. Have either of you two seen that one?
Yeah, I saw Argo a while ago, and I love that this kind of semi-political. There was a film that had been on recently that I've been meaning to watch. Is it? Well, it's not recent. It's probably ages ago now. That is it. News of the World, the Tom Hanks one, which I think is kind of another kind of similar political. When I say political action, it's not quite what I mean. But yeah, I do like things of that nature. And Argo, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember it being at the time like tense and edge of your seat again isn't the word, but you just feel on edge and kind of almost. It's almost not pleasurable to watch, but at the same time is. It's strange to have a film like that does that to you.
It's almost the Uncut Gems thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The tensions there. Yeah. Mm. News of the World's a decent film. That was Oscar nominated. That's the one which is the sort of cowboy world one, isn't it? If I remember rightly, is that the one?
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. Stu, have you seen Argo?
No, I haven't. I've just screen grabbed it now to put on the list for this week. There's a lot of these. I did realise earlier on that a lot of these films that Affleck's done I've never seen, and I don't know if that was kind of like the weird anti-Affleck movement of the time where he was a bit of a joke figure, and I kind of never bought into Arthur. Well, there's no point watching that stuff, even though it's obviously highly rated. But yeah, there's loads of it that I haven't seen, which is shameful, really. And my admission on the other podcast earlier about Abe Lincoln Vampire Hunter, which sounds amazing, and I now have to watch that as well.
It's dumb as fuck. Like, it's fun, but it is dumb as fuck. If you've seen Hansel and Gretel and Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, it's that kind of nonsense. So you'll enjoy it. Yeah. But as for Affleck, like, if you look at his directorial stuff, if you go from something like The Town to Live by Night, Gone Baby Gone, like he's able to do quite a few different things, but really infuse them with their own style. It's almost like he's not a director of one type of film. So I think you could quite happily watch all of his films back to back and not say that's a Ben Affleck film because he doesn't have a specific style, I think, personally. Matt, your number 4, please.
Now, I don't know if I'm completely making this up, but didn't we talk about this film only the other week? And it was one where Stu hated it and you loved it, Andy. I can't remember. But it's 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. Did you say it was like the most boring film you've ever seen? Or something else?
No, that was the other film. That was obviously The Banshees of Inisherin, which is what he compared it to. I said I didn't mind 3 Billboards. I thought it was fine. I just didn't get the overall love for it. But I like that a lot more than Banshees.
Now, I watched this on my honeymoon on the way to Mauritius. And what a way to get that romantic party started. However, I was enthralled by it. I absolutely loved it. And what my list here has shown me is the films that I probably like the most are more about the human relationships than I realised. I thought it was all about alien and shit like that. But actually, when I'm forced to talk about things that might have actually happened, the human relationships are the things that kind of get my or tick the boxes for me. And this is that story. It's about the relationships between the townsfolk and for something that's happened to a woman that's obviously horrific that no parent ever wants to go through. And I was watching it at the time, and I was just like, there's obviously, I say comedic. There are funny moments in the film, but it's not a comedy. It's not even a black comedy. But it's just the harshness and the brutalness of some of the scenes, then mixed in with the human nature story and the relationships between. I just think it makes for a really excellent, like, if not a bit dour piece of storytelling that really surprised me, because I went into it with no prior knowledge of the film or anything. I just needed something to get me through a couple of hours of a really long flight. But then by the end of it, I was like, wow, this is unbelievable. Then reading into the fact that these crimes actually happened and this actually happened, then made it even more of this story is just like, it's unbelievable and a real kind of thought provoking, really, that something like this can happen to someone, and it just doesn't then make you think, oh, I can't wait to hit that all inclusive bar. But you know what I mean? I just think it's a great film, all in all.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I'm a big fan of Marcy McDonagh anyway, so I think I was always going to like that film, and especially any movie with Sam Rockwell in. Like, if I remember rightly, I think it was Sam Rockwell and Woody were both Oscar nominated for Best Supporting, and I can't remember which one won it, but I feel like it might be Sam Rockwell. He's just something I would watch in absolutely anything. He manages to bring this chaotic energy to every single role he does. And he was perfect as that absolute fucking dipshit character that he was in Three Billboards. He really brought his, like, all of the big guns that he needed to smash that one out of the park. I think he was fantastic in that one. Stu, you're up next.
Talking about films that don't get the love that they deserve, and it's Black Hawk Down, which incredibly was from 2001, which I knew it had been a long time, and I remember going to the cinema to watch it, and then being one of the early DVD buys in the old Dolby Pro Logic days as well, with the surround sound. But just looking at the cast that was in it, and Josh Hartnett, Hugh McGregor, Tom Sizemore, Eric Bana, and you think, directed by, again, talking about Alien there, Ridley Scott, and you think, well, what is on the face of it a war film about, in the kind of Saving Private Ryan vein of, let's leave no man behind to go and rescue people and whatever. But just the brutality of it comes through more in this. Obviously, it's more modern, but I don't think, other than 1917 maybe, it has shown a war scenario as what you'd think is as realistic as it seems in this. I thought it was just really, really excellent and really well done, and more for sound than anything else, which we don't really talk about that often. But the sound in this film, and I know it was maybe influenced because I did have a surround sound set up early on, and I've only ever watched it like that maybe that makes a difference, but it just works perfectly. And it's one of them where it's no expense spared. And with these kind of war films, I know you hate war films, Andy, and you don't appreciate the love for them, but this is more of a... Is it more of a people thing? Because you are the usual dude bros and stuff in the some of them, but it's really hard to describe it because it's been out for over 20 years. But if this was released now, everyone would think masterpiece straight away. And I generally think they still would do, because it's one of them where no one talks about it ever, but I don't know why. And it's is it Somalis? I think Somali warlords rather than like Afghanis and all that kind of thing that we've had in recent times. So it's still relatively recent, from the 90s, but and obviously the Black Hawk helicopters that the name's based off, but it just don't get talked about, and I don't know why.
I honestly think, and this is going to sound bizarre, but this is just a purely perception thing. I think Black Hawk Down is perceived as a war film in the same way that Fast and Furious is perceived as a film about cars. If that makes any sense. In the it's how do I put it? It's the American Pie of a war film, but I think it is. I think it's like it's considered like a fashionable, bro-ish war film. Does that make any sense? It was like at the time it was. I remember what like the marketing for it and like even the cover of the film. I don't think it's like it's not a period piece about being wished away on a train for conscription, and it's a sad story. It's a film about helicopters and explosions and shit. Is the way it was perceived, and I think that's why, Stu. I think if it was like if you know, I think that's if you ask somebody about what was they'd put it in that kind of in that kind of ranking.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Unsurprisingly, I haven't seen it. It kind of sounds a little bit jarheadish. Is that a fair assessment?
It's a bit more. It's a bit more bang bang than Jarhead, really.
Okay.
But again, it's been a long time since I saw it, and it's one of them that I do love it so much that I don't want to watch it that many times.
Yeah, I get you.
I don't know if this is on your list. Have you got any more war-related films on your list, Stu? Before I go into this.
Yeah.
Okay. I won't mention it because I think you'll probably be the one that I'm thinking about. Move on.
Okay. So I'm up next. My number 3 is coming up later, so we'll just skip straight over that one, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. Matt, your number 3, please.
So this one, I think, might be the biggest disparity between review I can never get that word out. Review websites, and it gave a score of 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, but only a 7.8 out of 10 on IMDb, and that would be Nightcrawler, the Gyllenhaal movie Nightcrawler. It's the one where he is a photographer who realizes but he makes much more lucrative money if he's the first on the scene and he sells the videotapes to the news companies. It's honestly, it's tremendous. It's so it's really dark and gritty, and obviously there's a couple of other people that you'll have, Riz Ahmed's in it, Bill Paxton's in it, but it's really like Jay Gyllenhaal runs the show in this film, and his intensity and his verging on Bateman levels of dead behind the eyes really makes this kind of like a satirical piece about the state of our capitalist our need to consume information and be totally led by our fascination with death. It's just wonderful. It's a really great. And when you talk about a sleeper film, this is a sleeper film. Barely anyone's seen it, but it's really wonderful. And it didn't quite like mop up at the Oscars or anything like that, but there were through BAFTAs and stuff like that. It was certainly nominated for a fair few things, but this was the film for me that really piqued my interest in Gyllenhaal and made me realise he's more than some of the
Donnie Darko.
More than Donnie Darko, basically.
Yeah, I remember when Nightcrawler was released, and it's one of those films that has been on the list with like The Black Dahlia, one that I really want to see, and for whatever reason, I've just never found that couple of hours to fit it in. But I have just looked on IMDb and on Netflix, and it is there, so I have literally just added it to my list because it is one that I've wanted to watch for a while. So no excuses now.
Yeah, it's really good. And it's got everything that I think all three of us like individually in a movie as well. So I think we want to come back and discuss for sure.
Super. Stu, have you not seen that one either?
No, it's exactly the same. We've just added it there. I'd never even heard of it before.
I remember it purely because I remember that it was nominated for some Oscars, but it, like Matt said, it didn't really do anything, and I just never got round to it. But yeah, brilliant. So your number 3, please, Stu.
Well, my number 3, weirdly, he's on Netflix. Weirdly stars Jake Gyllenhaal as well, and it is Zodiac, which I hadn't seen or heard of before until last year. Which I heard of the case, of course, but not this film. But how the film talks about the backstory of the detectives and the journalists and all the mad stuff that went on, as well as just the serial killer stuff as well. Very different to the kind of thing I'd normally watch, which obviously becomes apparent of people who listen to this every week. But every now and again, I will sit down and watch something sensible and thought provoking, and this really got me. And I was kind of ashamed of myself that I hadn't watched it before, because when did it come out?
2007.
2007, yeah. So what? 15 years old now, and I saw it last year, and I don't remember it being. Again, I can't remember its release over here and what I was doing in 2007. I have no idea. Drinking probably, but yeah, like Matt was saying about Nightcrawler then, and like a bit like about Rain Man as well, where it makes you think about things more than you normally would do, even though from the premise of it, it's just a basic serial killer film. It's really not at all.
I vaguely remember watching it around the time of its release on DVD. And I think I'd watched too many of these kind of films because it's David Fincher, so it's obviously very Seven-esque. I think I'd just watched too many of them, so it didn't really make an impact on me when I watched it. And it's Robert Downey Jr. as he's like on the ascent once again. Like it's the start of him becoming more than just, you know, the screw up that he was, and then Iron Man. He's doing something a bit different. And I don't think I went in open minded, if I'm being perfectly honest. So I didn't love it, but it is one that I've always planned on revisiting. And I think part of my issue was the fact that, I mean, it's not a spoiler alert because it was sold on the fact that this was a real case, that they don't know who the Zodiac killer is. I think that spoiled it for me, was knowing that there was no real end to this movie because he was never caught. And I think that was my issue with this film.
I liked Zodiac. I just felt that I too was living my entire life in this film because it's long. Like it go and it's funny because I feel the exact same thing about Mindhunter. I feel like Mindhunter as a show just drags a little bit, and like I've never been able to finish it. Like I've tried, Lord knows I've tried, but I've never been able to just get through it. Like something else bright and shiny, like a magpie, will come along, and I just will watch something else. But it is a good film. To be fair, I did enjoy it, and you know that and Nightcrawler do kind of go hand in hand as well, kind of similar themes and those kind of things. So I'm unsurprised it's on Stu's list.
Yeah. So moving on, my number 2, sports stories are very popular. Obviously, we do other podcasts about sport, and we've talked about football films in particular. But there's stuff like The Fighter, Ford versus Ferrari was another film that I loved. Raging Bull, brilliant. But I, Tonya, I think might be one of the most interesting made films of the last sort of decade. I absolutely love Margot Robbie. I think she's fantastic, and she's wonderful in this movie, where she plays Tonya Harding, the figure skater who her partner or her partner's friend gets someone to attack her rival for a place on the Olympic team. And it's the perfect story in that you don't know what the truth is. It's filmed in a way a bit like a mockumentary style. So if you think back to This Is Spinal Taps, you speak to the people who are involved in the case. But because they're each narrating their own stories, they sort of clash a little bit. You don't know who to believe because they're sort of all full of shit in some respects. And it really makes for this really interesting film that comes out at the end of it. where she comes out very sympathetic, whereas from what I've read, because I don't really remember the case, I don't even know if it happened during our lifetimes, but she was obviously massively vilified for going outside of the sport to try to win. But this gave Tonya Harding a new lease of life, and she became something of a minor celebrity once again. And it was just a fantastic story. It was so well shot. It was so different to everything else that was going on. Like, we hadn't had that mockumentary style on a big scale for quite a while. So this was a bit of a return to that. And I just thought it was a wonderful movie. And Margot Robbie was like, she deserved her Oscar nomination. Alison Janney, who played her mother, and it was just the most foul cunt. She was horrible. But she really leaned into it. And you could tell that she had the time of her life playing that role. And it really showed, and it worked perfectly for her. She deserved her Oscar win at the end of it as well. Brilliant movie. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. I watched it around about the same time. There was a series on Netflix about, I can't remember what it was called now. It was about or it might have been a one-off documentary actually about like doping in sport and like what they do to young athlete A. That's what it was.
Yes.
Athlete A. And I watched that around at the same time, so I was kind of well up for this, and yet echo everything you said. And that I think it's one of them things. Like there's scandals all over the place, especially in football at the minute, and we don't. Obviously, there's legal reasons why we don't get it, but it's a shame that it takes so long for these stories to come out because you can't almost beat it for the tension and madness that it causes because the stakes are so high and people will do anything to get there. And yeah, I just wish that the legal people would fuck off and let us have our fun.
And as much as anything, it's a really funny film. Like, it shouldn't be, but like they managed to get comedy out of a pretty shitty situation for everybody. It's on Netflix. If anyone's interested, I would thoroughly recommend it.
Speaking of Margot Robbie's feet, have you seen the what's going on at the moment with the Barbie promotion? It's got you foot freaks going wild.
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine. I've seen the trailer. It does look excellent, I've got to say.
I'll absolutely go and watch it. Like this, like it should, and I almost hope it is shit. But there's an element of me that just thinks that like it'll just be so massively taking the piss and like almost looking at the camera, winking, nodding that this is silly, that it will be hilarious.
Yeah. And like it's being released on the same day as Christopher Nolan's next movie, Oppenheimer. and I know that Barbie is going to be the first film I see that day. Like, there's no competition. It just looks fun.
You can't do it that way around. You're gonna have to. Oppenheimer's going to be so much of a slog and well, not a slog. It's just going to be elongate, but it's going to be so taxing and thought provoking. Surely you're going to watch that in the morning, then go and have something to eat, and then come back and enjoy yourself watching Barbie. Surely you're going to do that right?
Maybe, but I was thinking, do you go with Barbie first as your aperitif, and then your main course is going to be Oppenheimer? I don't know. I don't know which way is the best way to do it.
It depends how outrageously silly it is, because if you go into Oppenheimer in a silly mood, and you're not going to appreciate it properly, are you?
Yeah, it will kill it, I suppose.
Yeah, I feel like Oppenheimer's going to be your carvery, whereas you've loaded your plate, you're full of stodge and carbohydrates,
candy floss,
and then you need like some ice cream just to settle the stomach afterwards, and that's your candy floss flavored ice cream in Barbie, just to to help you with your digestion at the end.
Yeah, that might be the way. But then again, if Barbie's that good, I might just watch it twice in one day. So Matt, your number 2, please.
So this was, I know it was released in very, very late 2021, but it was my film of 22 really, and that would have been Belfast. Absolutely adored. Yeah. I absolutely adored this film. Like it again came out of nowhere. Saw the wasn't the billboard, or I can't remember. The thing in Cineworld, the cutout, let's say, and thought, God, this film looks awful. This just does not look up my street whatsoever. And then saw it, and I was like, I couldn't stop thinking. I watched it like 3 or 4 times since in a really short space of time. Loved everything about it, the human story, the music in it, the way it looked. It's just a brilliant story, and something that like I said at the time when we talked about it, within weeks of it being released, something I'm really ignorant about, the Troubles and everything that happened in a relatively short amount of time and geography, distance-wise. I think it's just a really, again, it's just real, and it's that family dynamic that doesn't need CGI and doesn't need explosions and, in this case, colour to get across a really wonderful story that completely had me shocked and laughing and crying. And they do so much with so little in this film, and Branagh's got a lot to do with that. So yeah, I think Belfast was my film of 22, and I'll have to watch it again. Just by merely mentioning it makes me just want to watch it again. So it must have had a good impact on me at some point.
It was a film that I saw. It was a secret screening at Cineworld. So obviously I rocked up, no idea what it was. It was the first, I think it was either the first or the second week of January. So it was a good month or so before it was released. Not a clue what the film could have been. I sat through it. Obviously I was willing to give it a chance. A lot of people walked out as soon as it turned to black and white. And they missed the fucking treat, to be perfectly honest. I really, really enjoyed it. As you say, like, I think it's shameful that this country doesn't teach people more about the Troubles and everything that's gone on in Ireland. And I know why they don't do it, because we're the bad guys in that story. So they try to ignore that kind of shit, which isn't fair. So it was kind of nice to get a little bit of knowledge about this situation that I'm massively ignorant towards. Also, like, as a film, it's very stagey. Oftentimes I would say that's a negative, but in this, it helped because the story was a stage play. Like, it's it's very different to it, but it reminded me of Blood Brothers. I don't know if either of you have seen the play of Blood Brothers. The scene is basically, it's a street in Liverpool, and it all sort of revolves around this street and in the house, and visually it reminded me of that. Like, they could easily have put that on a stage and it being exactly the same, and it would have been perfect for it. I really enjoyed Belfast. I thought it was a great movie. I haven't watched it since, for the reason that Stu mentioned earlier with one of the other films, that I don't want to like spoil that memory of it, but I loved it. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, I remember when, because I'd watched it through, so I missed that screen of it, didn't I? And it was ages away until it was released afterwards. And I know she was doing Judy Dench was doing the press tour and everything, and she was on this morning and they were talking and she was having a good laugh and everything. So I thought, I saw this, I'm not going to wait. So I watched it through other means at the time, and I told so many people about it that I justified it to myself that I was doing a public service by not going to see it in the cinema, because so many other people did because of me. And it takes a lot to recommend a film like this, because, like you said, people did walk out, and it's understandable because it is a bit artsy fartsy from the outside looking in. Selling things like Black Hawk Down, bang bang helicopters, whatever, easy. Most people are going to go for that. But for something like this, it does take a bit of trust. Like half the films that you mentioned, they're never going to be watched ever because they're Andy films. But some will, some give a chance to, and they don't always hit. But with this, there was just something about it from the very start. And I drink in an Irish club every other week, and I have done for 15 years. And a lot of Irish people, Republic of Ireland, not Northern Ireland specifically, but I have got a couple of family members in Northern Ireland, so I don't know a bit more than the normal person about what went on there. Obviously, it was before our time, but And you saw what happened in the when England played there in '93, and all the kick-off that happened and has done since. So it's obviously not an ideal situation, but it was the fact that, again, that they made that situation humorous, and it was the people that came across and the warmth of the people more than the terrible situation they were in that made it so special. And I don't want to see it again for a long, long time for the reasons that you just said.
Yeah. Stu, what's your number 2?
Amazingly, a film that we mentioned literally 2 weeks ago, and it's Apollo 13, which again is. I'm not claustrophobic in any way, really. I'm not scared of being trapped in a lift or wherever, anything like that. But being trapped in space, knowing that you could potentially burn up or die, is got to be quite horrendous. And how this film, Apollo 13, made it feel is probably one of the reasons for that. Because I don't remember thinking that as a kid, and a spaceman or that kind of thing that you go through space phase, but it's just really, really well made. Everyone's on point. Visuals are superb still. Everything about it is just really well done. And the fact that it's America admitting America's faults and that they are not the best in the world all the time, that was something that don't get talked about very often, really. And they didn't glorify this. They fully went in that this was a fuck up and they had to get them back in some way. And I think it was just really, really excellently well done. And whether the film about this situation that he's now that old still holds up if you watch it now as much as Gravity with with ER's Mr. Loverman in. You put them back to back, you wouldn't be able to tell which one was which. Take the 3D bit away. They still look as good as each other.
It's incredible to think that it's a 1995 film. But I think that's the beauty of having practical effects over computer-generated effects, to be perfectly honest, most of the time. I think it's easier for things to hold up when it's real, when it's tangible. Like, obviously, it's a period piece, but it doesn't feel dated with it. Yeah.
No.
Matt, have you seen Apollo 13?
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while since I've seen it though. But I know that's one of those films that, again, I know it's hard to link Rain Man and Apollo 13, but I think it's one of those where it's just gone under the radar amongst a catalogue of other films by the actors that are in it. I'd be hard pressed to find anybody kind of under the age of 20 that's seen Apollo 13. I think. I just don't think it's one that this just exists in the public consciousness anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, because again, looking at that cast, they've all got bigger hitters under their belt, haven't they? So, yeah, I get where you're coming from with that one. Right, some honourable mentions. Zola is one of mine. I don't know if either of you have seen or even heard of this film.
Zola
the movie's no, just Zola. It's called. So the story is the film is based on a Twitter thread. To be perfectly honest, it sounds insane. It was two people talking on Twitter about nonsense. One of them invites the other one to do a cross-country thing with her and her boyfriend, who is actually her pimp. They end up doing all this mad shit that goes wild. The film itself's fine, like it's not amazing, but it was how they managed to show the technology in the modern day, these people tweeting at each other back and forth and then popping up on the screen. And it was just a really interesting piece, the way it was done. Like, the film, I think, is a solid 7. It's nothing outstanding, but it was a really enjoyable movie that hardly anyone has even heard of for reasons of it being like a tiny budget that barely made any impact. But it was great. It's worth a watch. The main character is annoying as fuck, but it kind of helps with the way the film is all laid out. Rocket Man. I love Rocket Man. I like the fact that it's silly and it's not a straight retelling. It's not a normal retelling of Elton John's life. The fact that they do make it a little bit off the wall and what have you, I think works really well for the character of Elton John. So it's a great film to represent him. Selma was a film which is about the walk to Selma of Martin Luther King really powerful, really just an amazing movie. I would also tie that in with Judas and the Black Messiah, which was out last year, which was another civil rights movie starring Daniel Kaluuya. I love that man. I think he's one of my favourite actors working today. Him and Lakeith Stanfield in it were incredible. Who obviously he was also in Get Out together as well. So they seem to have this chemistry together that works really well. So those are two of the films that I'd thoroughly recommend to anybody. Matt, have you got any honourable mentions?
Yeah, I don't think it would have cropped up on your number one, so I think I'm okay. But The Big Short, I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed it because I didn't understand that world, and it compensates for it by basically insulting you and saying, "Listen, you don't need to know about this. Here's Margot Robbie in the bath. You big filthy perverts." Like it's just one of those where you don't need to know it, but you can understand. Like, and it's got some big hitters in it from an actor's point of view as well. I think it's just a really well put together film that, you've got The Wolf on Wall Street, brilliant, but there's the actual world behind it, and if that piques your interest in any way, you'll enjoy this. And I thought it was brilliant. I had a really, really good time with it. My other one, obviously you mentioned so many sports ones, but Moneyball, I thought was just excellent. It was just, again, I care so little for most American sports, including baseball. But you don't need to understand baseball to enjoy this story. And who doesn't love an underdog story? And it's transcended the film because people use the Moneyball method. It's like it's a cliche now in all sports. You hear it, like people talk about Premier League teams that use the Moneyball method, and people know it for looking at stats and looking at not necessarily big star players, but they won't even know a film even existed. And if that's not a legacy of actually something that's great, I don't know what is.
Yeah,
Stu?
You say like Mitoma might be the biggest success story of Moneyball existing in the entire world. But I don't know anything else. I'm going to have to say, because I doubt very much it's going to be number one for anyone, but Titanic is... It's it's a spectacle. In the last hour is a spectacle that is still stands up very, very well. The film itself is ridiculous, obviously. The story is pretty shit. And they're not great in it either, but for the from when it starts sinking, the whole iceberg onwards, it still looks brilliant, and it's still even in 3D as well. Yes, I know, but they did a really good job with it. So I'm giving it a mention. It's not on the list, but it's getting a mention. As is Saving Private Ryan. I saw it so many times, probably too many times for me, and it's pretty obvious. But the one that I think it's a shame because it's a TV series that it's not allowed. But Chernobyl. Has there anything ever been made that's based on something that actually happened that's been as well made as that series was? I don't think so. I think it's an absolute masterpiece of anything, and it deserves some kind of mention because it's not going to fit in anything we ever do because it's so devastating and awful, but incredibly well made all the same.
Yeah, it's a great shout. That is, I'd never even thought of that one, but yeah, absolutely. Yeah, devastating is the right word for it, I think, Stu. Right, so my number one, I'm really glad because I thought Stu might have mentioned this one in his honourable mentions, but it's The Black Klansman. We've spoke so many times. I mean, I always say how much I love Spike. I think he's a fantastic director. And he went through a little bit of a period of time where his films didn't hit quite the same as they did. But then he did Black Klansman, which was just outstanding. Even though it's set in the 1970s, it does feel as prescient today as it ever did. And I think the fact is that they end it with the scene that happened. I can't remember the town. I believe it was somewhere in Texas where that racist fuck drove into all of those people during a march, a peaceful march that turned deadly. The story is timeless, even though it's set way back when. It still means something today. It's the story of Ron Stallworth, a black American cop who joins the Ku Klux Klan. In order to infiltrate it, he has to get his friend to pretend to be him. He somehow managed to get on the phone with the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. It's funny in parts. Lee manages to find the humour in the absurdity of that whole situation. But when you take a step back and look at what was actually going on, it is devastating to think that was needed at that time, that those people were somehow managing to get a foothold in American politics. I mean, some may say they still are there, but that's another discussion for another podcast, I think. But I'm such a big fan of John David Washington as well. Denzel's kid, he's excellent in everything I've seen him in. Even when the film hasn't been that great, he's always excelled in it. And he's brilliant in this alongside Adam Driver. I truly love this film. It's one of my favourites. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah. I echo everything about it. But again, because of its stupid name, it's never going to get any recognition. Or you say it to someone and they think, well, what the fuck's that about? And then you tell them and they're even less put off. But it's like a lot of the films on these lists, they're just very, very well done for what they are, and amazingly underrated in some cases. And this is one where even the premise, I tried to get a couple of people on the couch who watch these kind of things. So I said, Black Klansman, no interest whatsoever. You think, well, why? It's got Denzel's son, and I think, but who they didn't. I mean, would he even know Denzel Washington had a son, which is by the by, but it just suffers again for weird reasons, which it really shouldn't do because it's excellent.
Yeah, I think this is one of it'd be a really niche top 5 if we did this as a theme, but top 5 films that use humor to describe awful things. And this would be one of those films that would be on that list, because sometimes some things are that uncomfortable that you can only broach the subject and educate people on it by using humor. And it's an uncomfortable truth for a lot of people that that racism obviously still exists, but existed to the extent that it did then, and people don't know about certain stories, and the only way you can approach them sometimes is by having a humorous, not necessarily a comedy behind it, but humorous undertones to it. And I think that's what this film does well.
Yeah, because it could quite easily lean in towards becoming a lecture about it, and it doesn't do that, does it? I think that's a great point, that is, Matt. Matt, what's your number 1, please?
So it's not quite when I mentioned the family dynamic that seems to have gone through all of my films so far, but I suppose it is in a way when you talk about Goodfellas. Because it's not necessarily a biological family, but it's the Castra Nostra, the bond between the mobsters and things of that nature. Obviously, I don't think people, whilst it's got really visual, stunning elements to it, it's not Oscar baity at all, is it, Goodfellas? But it does verge on guilty pleasure in terms of it's not The Godfather either, in a storytelling masterpiece either, but it's thoroughly entertaining throughout, isn't it, Goodfellas? I think there's no time of the day or week, or there's not many scenarios that isn't improved by you watching Goodfellas. If you're hungover, you can watch Goodfellas. If you're just after something classic that you've seen before a million times, but you won't get bored of it, watch Goodfellas. It serves so many masters, and I think it's one of those films where it again transcends the film itself. Everybody quotes it. It's used in WrestleMania Goes Hollywood. Do you know what I mean? It's just a classic, and in the backdrop of other mob films that get made that are probably leaning into the serious a bit too much, I think it's okay to have a film that does lean into the more, not silly, but the more wise, cracky kind of side that Goodfellas does lean into occasionally.
So Goodfellas was my number 3 that we skipped over. Yeah, everything you said is spot on. They managed to tell a story that I think in the hands of a lesser director would have been a very grandiose, over the top attempt at telling The Godfather. And it doesn't do that. It manages to take The Godfather but make it a popcorn film.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's still like fucking 2.5 hours long. Like, it's still a sizable film, but it manages to make it so much more digestible than something like The Godfather. And it's infinitely better than Casino. I feel like Casino is a poor man's remake of the Goodfellas. I just don't think Casino works as well. Whereas I feel like Goodfellas is Scorsese at his absolute best. Like, his script work, the camera work, the editing, everything about that film is as close to perfection as you're going to get on a film. It is absolutely wonderful. And it's got my favourite ever Oscar-winning acceptance speech from Joe Pesci, where he literally just walks on stage, says thank you, and walks off. Like, everyone should be a little bit more, have a bit more brevity when it comes to these things, rather than the over-the-top nonsense. Yeah, Goodfellas is fantastic. I think that might have been the first film I ever saw of Scorsese. And brilliant film.
Yeah, it's probably more accessible and more watchable than Godfather and Scarface as well, and that kind of thing. And the Mafia games as well are very much more towards Goodfellas than they are anything else, really. And that's why I'm amazed you, especially Andy, haven't played the Mafia games, because they are amazing.
I have played one where it was like an isometric, not Grand Theft Auto, but almost that style. But I can't remember what that was called.
Oh, that might have been one of the side spin-off things. Yeah, it's probably on. It was definitely was on PlayStation Plus, Essential at some point. If you redeemed them all, but if not, I'm guessing it's got to be on. It'll be on Extra or on Game Pass as well. It's the definitive edition, the remake of the first game is superb. It's not as good as Goodfellas, but we're talking about games again. But it's very much more influenced by Goodfellas and the humor and that kind of brevity of it than Goodfellas, which is with Godfather, which it's much more enjoyable for me. This film, but again, it's almost like a parody now. Oh, you like film, you like Goodfellas. Well, everyone should like Goodfellas, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just added to download to my machine for the first Mafia game, so brilliant. But I like the fact that it matters as well. I love the catchphrases that you get from this one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what am I, a schmuck? And, funny how. Like, funny how. I don't know what it is about that saying, but it encapsulates that arsehole character so much. And I've got like the fuck you pay me essay meme saved in my favourites folder on my phone because I love it. Yeah, brilliant. Stu, what's your number 1, please?
It's been mentioned over the years quite a few times since we've been doing this, and it was the last film where I've been in a screening of anything that's been sold out and completely silent from start to finish up until the end of the credits, where we walked out and no one spoke to each other, because it was just a sensational experience, and that was Dunkirk, which for a film that's basically just about evacuating people off a beach, which in effect it is, using shitty broken taped together boats and normal people. It's just perfect. It's the film that you could say to people who don't like war films, go and watch this, because even though it's based around maybe one main person, it doesn't really matter. It's kind of what all the stories that my granddad used to tell me about war and how bad everything was and all that kind of thing. He kind of brought it home, and I don't know if it was because I was personally more affected to it because I'd from family and friends who've been through it, and obviously not that event itself, but in that period, and it was kind of like come real what they'd said for years and years. And sadly, he died before it came out, so he never got to see. But it's one of them things where I've had a lot of older friends as well, and through football and whatever, who talked about things like that and the D-Day landings and whatever, and a lot of that stuff. You play the early Call of Duty games, and everyone's and Medal of Honor and all that kind of things, and it's all like bang, 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 rah, rah. And like we talked about with Black Hawk Down, but with Dunkirk, it like that film, it just made everything more real, and it didn't glamorize it, and it made it look shit. And obviously, you've got a bit of artistic license with the Spitfire bit as well, but other than that, and 1917, which I've mentioned a few times, it was just a powerful moment, which is few and far between. And I've seen it again since, and it obviously wasn't anywhere near as effectful, but if that's even a word. But the first time I saw this in the cinema was special, and I probably can't count on both hands the amount of time that's happened in the last 25, 30 years. And it was just an amazing experience, and it deserved to be the fact that it's a mad story in the first place, and how well they executed it as well.
I regret not seeing it in the cinema. I saw it on TV, and still HD and all that nonsense, and yeah, it was a great view. It didn't work for me all that much. As someone who doesn't really care for war films, I know I'm sort of on a bit of a loser with that one anyway. But as a Christopher Nolan fan, I thought maybe that'll see me through. But hearing you talk about it and how more impactful it was on a big screen, I feel like I missed out by not seeing it in the cinema.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, but I didn't think it was a huge triumph for me personally. There was something that just didn't click with me about it, but I think I think I need to probably watch it again and watch it from. I think I wanted it more of a. I think I was going into it wanting Saving Private Ryan when I shouldn't have. I should have wanted it wanting Bird Song without the sex. Yeah, I think I probably just wasn't in the right frame of mind for it because I know we joke about Stu's choices in film, and Cocaine Bear is a testament to that. But he does have a good sense of films as well. So if Stu talks about it so highly, it's definitely worth another go.
Yeah, I think so. Brilliant. Right, that's our top 5 done. I've got a quiz on real life films.
Oh, good.
If I remember correctly, Matt, you were the runner-up last time. So would you like the first set of questions or the second?
I'll go with the second set of questions, please.
You'll have the second. Okay, right. So, okay then. So, Matt, Cinderella Man is about which boxer?
Oh, fuck. Cinderella Man. I'm sure this is who Raging Bull's about, but it's not Rocky Marciano, is it?
No, it's not Rocky Marciano. Stu, do you know the answer for a point?
Smoking Joe, maybe?
No, it's Jim Braddock, or James J. Braddock, Gentleman Jim. No. I was quite surprised. I actually knew that one for a change. Right, okay. Stu, My Week with Marilyn was set during the production of which film?
Oh, fuck yeah. These films that we've deliberately never heard of before. My Week with Marilyn.
I have seen this film. I didn't know this was the film it was set during, though, to be fair.
I'm guessing it's about Monroe.
Yeah, it's
not
about
Manson. Is it the president one? No.
It's not. It's not sure. I don't think you'll get it. Matt, have you got any ideas on this one?
The 7-Year Itch?
No. It's The Prince and the Showgirl. Which, I've got to be honest, I've not even heard of that one. So, yeah, that was a bit of an odd one. Okay, so Matt, your question. Name the film based on the memoir of neurologist Oliver Sack, starring Robin Williams as a doctor working with catatonic patients. So, a film with Robin Williams where he plays a doctor with catatonic patients, and it's based on the memoir of neurologist Oliver Sack.
These are like proper like pub quiz questions that like
Yeah,
only lunatics get the answer to.
No, I don't even know if Robin Williams is in Patch Adams, but
that was my first thought, was Patch Adams, but that was with kids and laughing. So Stu, any ideas?
No clue at all. No idea.
Awakenings. I have
Never
seen
heard
that
of it.
one. So but yeah. Stu, of which baseball team is Billy Bean the general manager in Moneyball?
Oh God. Nate's going to be there pulling his non-existent hair out of this. I'm going to say Red Sox, but and no, it's wrong.
No, it's not the Red Sox.
No.
Matt, can you remember?
Fuck knows, mate. The Buccaneers. Is that a baseball team? I don't know.
I don't know.
No,
it's the Oakland A's. Yeah, I don't know what that one is. Right, okay. That was Stu's question. I'm losing my place. Right, so Matt, in Lion, an Australian couple adopts Saru Briley from which country? Fucking, I don't know what film this is.
Zambia.
No, it's not Zambia. Stu, do you know?
I'll say Nairobi.
It's India. Which I suppose, I assume because the film's called Lion, I'm guessing maybe that Saru Briley is a lion. I don't know. No. Stu, I reckon you might get this one, Stu. Which two actors starred as James Hunt and Niki Lauda in 2013's Rush?
Oh no. Hemsworth and... Oh God. Is he dead? No, he's not the one who played Chekhov. He's the other one. Oh, Daniel Brühl. Yeah.
That's correct. Yes, well done, Stu. I knew you'd get that one. Right. Matt. Charlize Theron won the Oscar for her portrayal of which serial killer in Monster?
No. Pass.
She was Australian, I think, if I remember rightly.
Well, no.
Stu?
I'm not saying it, to be fair.
Neither have I. I didn't watch it. I did.
It's really good. She plays Eileen Warnos. It's a really good film. Really recommend it. Right, Stu. The founder starred Michael Keaton as the mastermind behind which restaurant chain?
Founder.
The founder starring Michael Keaton. Which restaurant chain?
And it's going to be too easy to say McDonald's, surely. You wouldn't be there. You'd know about that. In and Out.
It's not In and Out. Matt?
It is McDonald's. The devious so-and-so stole the idea off those two brothers, didn't they?
Yeah. Right, Matt. Michael Fassbender starred as which tech entrepreneur in a 2015 film? Tech entrepreneur, 2015.
He wasn't Steve Jobs, was he?
He was, yeah. Yeah, Steve Jobs. He was, because he had two films out at the same time. One was him and one was Ashton Kutcher.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And neither of them is as good as the Anthony Edwards one from the early 2000s, maybe. I can't remember what that one. It was a made-for-TV movie, but he was amazing.
Okay. Right, so Stu, you need this one to pull level. In what 2005 film starred Joaquin Phoenix as Johnny Cash?
Walk the Line.
walk the line. There we go. So it's finished 2-2 this week. I don't have a tiebreaker, and I'm not going to make one up just for the sake of it. So yeah, 2-2 this week. Right, okay. So that's us done this week. Next week we've got a look back because we're approaching like 150 episodes overall. So we're having a look back at the start of the podcast way back when. We've then got a games cast, which I'm looking at Stu to see if he's sorted out yet.
Oh, well, yeah, we've got a special guest.
Okay, good. Glad you've sorted it.
It's called. I've just looked it up. It wasn't Anthony. It was the other one from ER. It was Noah Weil. It's called Pirates of Silicon Valley.
Okay, brilliant. I used to like ER. I do miss those days. So yeah, got a games cast coming up, and then Matt, I'm hoping, might be persuaded to do a music cast after that as well.
Oh yes, you know me, mate. I'll do that any day of the week.
I feel like there's been a lot of music early doors this year that we need to discuss. So yeah, perfect. Right, so get in contact. Let us know what your favourite films based on true stories are. Or they might even be based on true stories. Like there's that much nonsense out there. Get in contact with us, cagefightingpod@gmail.com or socials @cagefightingpod. Please make sure you subscribe on whatever podcast show it is that you use. And please, if you can leave us a review, it would help us, no doubt, on the algorithms. For this week, Matthew, would you like to say goodbye?
Take it easy, everybody. Have a great week ahead. Check in on your pals also.
Stu, would you like to say goodbye?
Happy Easter, everyone. Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. And remember, be excellent to each other.